he got it. There we go.
It's your second time on. We just roll right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, man, I really appreciate having me on. First time ever being interviewed on a podcast for a conversation. Yep. And I honestly thought I'd screw the last one up. So I thought there's no way in hell Robbie's going to have me back.
I think the first, we're definitely going to have plenty more podcasts, but I think it's just like the first time it's like you don't really understand the exposure of Scientology until like, I know Stephanie, shout out to her. She's a gem. She told me a lot about like just the horrible acts that kind of come with it. And here's the thing about religion. And I brought this up recently to my buddy because we were listening. I don't know if you know what Rage Against the Machine is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I do.
Okay, so the monk that lit himself on fire in front of all those people because he hated what the world was turning into and he was trying to make a mark. That's brainwashing. Now, everyone looks at that like that's such a brave act to do, to sacrifice yourself as a symbol for humanity, trying to wake people up in the situation that they're in. I'm like, yeah, but he was so brainwashed by his religion that he had a different viewpoint on the world that next thing you know, he's burning himself with gasoline. And to think that that's not that far off to what somebody could do today, I'm surprised we don't have people doing something to themselves in such an outrageous way in front of public display of things. Because I mean, everyone right now, it's like religion, like when you hear people talk about religion, when you hear people talk about anything, it's a part of their own reality. So I try and give it like the just view, which is like, look, I don't know if you know this, but I'm an ordained minister.
Okay, cool.
But I'm ordained under the United Church of Bacon. And now when I say that, look, it's 100%, you can look it up. I dived, I think, probably at the beginning of this podcast journey into parody religions. And I wanted to study what parody religions was because my buddy was like, dude, have you ever heard about Pastafarianism where they worship a giant spaghetti monster? And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God.
Now, my reaction was the same as yours, just laughing and thinking it was something simple. But then when you look at why these things were created, they have some really deep meaning into it. And I understand you can get deep meaning out of anything if you decide to drink Coke one day instead of Pepsi. You could say that was a sign, and you can pull something really deep and like kind of philosophical out of it. But like with Pastafarianism, it was the fact of like that all religions should be taught in school, that the fact that someone believes that there's a giant spaghetti monster or something that creates all these things, it's that person's own idea or belief that gets them into the next day. I mean, we have religions, and I think throughout the ages, since the dawn of man or since humankind has ever been created, there has been religions where, fuck, the guy that tried to sacrifice his son for God, and God was like, what, don't do that, don't do that. It's like, it was a test of faith. This has been known, the Crusades, all these things that have happened, horrible acts, all in the name of religion, because it's all because of someone's belief. Now, that's the worst way it ends out. More positive way is just helping you get to the next day by believing in something, whether that is Scientology, whether that is a religion of Christianity. But Scientology, I think, has just some shaky footing ground, because I was trying to listen to some episodes before you came on of like some Scientology podcasts so I can get a just view of what this really is, because I already don't have a good view on it, and they're fucking stalking me, man. It's really creepy.
It was gonna happen.
As long as I don't get shot, I don't care. Beat me up, that's fine. But when I was looking into it, it's like they claim that there's over 600 million people that are involved in Scientology. Well, now they're looking at like the just numbers is around 500,000, and a lot of that population goes to Africa. And people go, well, why is it in Africa? And I go, because when you look at these Afghani soldiers that are carrying AK-47s and running around shooting and doing crazy things, they've tested the education on people from overseas or in another country where the education system isn't as improved, and their basic level of knowledge is at like a second graders. And so you don't really know anything at that point. So you can be convinced to do a lot of stuff. Like if I went into the Amish community and I just brought a cell phone in there and I said, you can ask me any question, I can tell you the answer. I can Google it on my phone. They don't know about Google. At least I don't think they do, but I would look like a god. You know, it's a power trip thing.
Absolutely. Just touching on what you said there. I mean, I was born and raised a Catholic. My grandfather was part of some religious sort of off sect of them. It was really weird, and I've come to the conclusion that the Bible is responsible for more death, destruction than any other war, famine, plague, anything. Is just caused so many problems, and it's taking that idea of religion and its destructiveness, if that's even a word, and then being able to apply that to the poor buggers in Scientology who are essentially brainwashed, or they're easily manipulated, or they were born into it, or their parents forced them into it, or it's just really crazy. And then the moment they wake up and they go, oh my God, this is all crap. This is complete crap. What the hell am I doing with my life? And then they start with the threats. They start telling you you'll lose your family, your friends. We'll take away everything from you. We will stalk you. We will sue you, harass you, put you under surveillance, and basically fair game you. Even though the policy of fair game apparently doesn't exist, but it clearly still does, even today. But according to them, it doesn't exist.
I think the one thing I really don't appreciate or really like about Scientology is the fact of how they view mental health, but also the fact of like, I don't like things where, I think we all are probably in a group or something that eventually we understand like, oh, wait, this was actually really toxic. And then when you start to see the weird stuff that starts to happen, I think we've all met people that we thought we were friends with. Then eventually you check like you're blocked or something. You're like, why am I blocked by this person? All because like for me, I do a lot of conversations with people. So I can't keep up with all 900 something people I've talked to. So that's why I always tell people, you just got to reach out to me if you want to be back on the show. Don't think I forgot about you. Because it's hard to stay in contact, especially with a person like me that just hates social media. It's really, really divisiveness, especially. But when you look at like a group that turns on you so quickly, and then you thought you were part of the family, you thought you were appreciated, you thought you were really a human being with your own individual thoughts, that they actually cared about you. Like, Sean, I care about you. I really want you to excel in the Scientology program. But then what happens if you do something they don't like, and then suddenly it just feels weird? It's like going into work and you realize nobody really wants you there. And they're like, I don't feel comfortable in the space that I'm being. And I don't think in any, and my heart goes out for a certain group of people in particular, which is anybody that feels like they're uncomfortable in the position in life that they are. Where you feel like it's like wearing a wool sweater in the middle of summer. Like it's just not comfortable. It doesn't feel good. You're sweating all the time and you just want to get out of that situation, because nobody should feel like that in any part of their life. And there are people out there that feel like that on a constant basis, and I know it's a long rant, but I mean, there's only a few things in the world. I'm about to lighten it up, hopefully, but there's only a few things in the world people have gone to war for, and that's money, power, and then pussy. And that's it.
Yeah.
Those are the three basic functions that everyone has gone to a war for. But the fact of religion is money. Religion is all of that. Religion can be, and that's what I think is so interesting now, where like I talk about this with people. Like religion is every year becomes a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower, and drastic actions happen where like, a terroristic attack or a pandemic or something that brings people back to religion, but it doesn't stay. Back in the day, there were so many people going into church, and now I don't see any kids my age going into church, anything over the age of 7. It's always the older generations. And I'm thinking when those older generations die off and then the other generations my age starts becoming older, there's going to be a large gap with religion where, I mean, it was a stereotype for so long talking about Catholic priests. And then people are like, wait a minute, it's actually fucking happening. I'm like, no shit. It came from somewhere. Like it wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It came from somewhere. So I'm wondering if Vatican's going to be its own country. My main thing is I would like to look into the archives and see what the hell they got down in there. Because apparently there's rumored texts of like JFK assassination documents, all because the government can't keep those, like, because the Freedom of Information Act. So this is a beautiful thing. So Stephanie used the Freedom of Information Act emailed to their website and got Mike Rinder's like assault charges that were put against him after Scientology had jumped him or whatever outside of his car. I don't know the full story.
That's outside in the car park, and it was actually his ex-wife, sorry, and his daughters, and he had the whole thing recorded. So yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So she put out a Freedom of Information Act thing to be able to get those documents and then get the full story and then put it up on her blog. Now, the interesting thing about the Freedom of Information Act is it's a website that you can look up. It's in the States, and you can submit anything, and they will give you documents of what they can disclose to you. Now, I've spent many times, and there's a lot of articles already, so you can just look through. Like I spent, I think, hours looking at JFK stuff, 9/11 stuff, Wuhan lab stuff. But the weird part about it is you have to be 100% specific and what
Yes.
the hell you're doing. So if you're going to look up Tom Cruise Scientology, nothing's going to pop up. But if you know a specific date and an instance, what happened on that day that you want to know about, you will get the information for. And it's like, well, now you already know that we know about it. So you have to make sure you're 100% on the mark. And if you're even off by a slight, you won't get the information or you won't get any results. So then that can actually cause you to be like, okay, maybe it's just a rumor. And then you don't look into it any longer. But if you're
Mhm.
100% in belief that it is true, you can find that information.
Absolutely. I remember Mike actually talking about that, and I do 100% believe him. Not only because is he an Australian? Yes, he is, but he's lived most of his life in the US. It just kept following the same pattern every single time. Remember that Mike Rinder was a fairly high-ranking Scientologist. He was actually in charge of a special area called OSA, which stands for now what's OSA? Can't remember what OSA stands for, but some of your listeners will hear OSA. Oh, yeah, that's what they're talking about. And no, Office of Special Affairs. He was head of Office of Special Affairs, and he was actually responsible for counteracting negative press, negative perceptions, negative articles against Scientology, and then taking those and changing the story around and so on and so forth. So when he jumped ship in London, it was basically they opened a Pandora's box that will never be able to be closed. And it took him a good 2 to 3 years to actually publicly talk about it, because I don't know if you know the story, but he was in London and he had actually been in the hole for I think 18 months to up to 2 years, and that's the place where they send the naughty Scientologists who are out ethics and are not making the quotas, and maybe they drank a little bit too much at a party and made a little bit of a fool of themselves, and now they've found themselves in a hole with 18 other executives and they're all fighting each other. And he just got to the point where he said, I'm walking. I don't care. I'm going to walk out of here with the clothes on my back. I am just going to walk out and leave. And that's exactly what he did. Nobody stopped him. No one got suspicious about what he was doing. He went and sat in a park about 2 or 3 blocks away from where he was in London, and had a good hard think to himself. And he's like, right, what the hell do I do now? I've walked away from everything. So he contacted a friend that had left Scientology, got him back to the States, and actually got him a job selling cars at a dealership. And he did that until he was able to get on his feet. And then he was able to team up with Leah Remini, and then they started speaking out. And then A&E took the entire series on board, and they made Scientology in the aftermath. And then they continue to talk about it with this Fair Game podcast, which I listen to every week, except for this week. I think it's you guys have got a holiday or something this week, or something like that, or I had something. I don't know, like Labor Day or something.
Jewish holiday, but
there's a Jewish holiday. Okay.
well, we just celebrated 9/11, so if that counts as a
yes, and of course, my sympathies and condolences to any and all affected by that. I was actually watching live when that happened. It was I will never ever forget that moment. It's crazy.
My heart goes out to the people that had family members that were in there, but also the people that had a birthday that were like 40 when that day happened, because now their birthday is always going to be associated with 9/11.
9/11. Yep.
Horrible.
Absolutely.
But back to the United Church of Bacon thing. So I actually went to my courthouse and actually spent 45 minutes trying to convince one of the people to stamp it with approval that I am an ordained minister. I have not married anybody yet, but I did pay the fee, and then I also got my thing ordained. So it is a legal certificate I can send you. But the United Church of Bacon, the whole point behind it, which I thought was interesting about parody religions, is that it was a safeguard for atheists, because I don't know if a lot of people remember, because like we were talking earlier about the number of people that are religious have kind of been dwindling down every single year. Well, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, if you even said that you were atheist, like people would give you a lot of shit. Like, what do you mean you're atheist? You don't believe in anything, so you're going to be dust in the fucking wind? It's like, well, I just don't. Sorry. So people wouldn't even ever bring it up that they were atheists. Like most scientists were atheists, but they never put it on their fucking resume. It's very interesting to me too, as well, is that with every single president, we only elect a Christian president. Like that's just the same war or nuclear family type thing that everyone really appreciates. It's like we've never had an atheist, and people go, we might never ever have an atheist president. I was like, I'm pretty sure, because right now, if you say you're atheist, people don't even question it. They don't care. back 5-10 years ago, people gave a shit. So this United Church of Bacon was started to be a safeguard for atheists. So if you said, what
Mm.
religion are you? And you, instead of saying atheist, just be like, I'm United Church of Bacon. They were like, what? And then it would kind of like, it would give you time to be able to understand, like, now you're getting the heat taken off you. Because just saying the
Mm.
word atheist, people look at like, well, let me try and convince you to pick a religion so you're not going to be damned to hell. And then, I
Yes.
mean, I think the worst thing you probably say now is like, oh, I'm a Scientologist. People are like, what?
Even, believe it or not, even if you tell people that you're a Satanist, most people that I know and have encountered in various social settings and stuff are like, oh, okay, right, yeah, no problems. But yeah, you say you're a Scientologist, everyone will go, hang on, you're in a cult. You do realize that, right? It was made up by a science fiction
No,
writer who wanted
they
to make
don't
money.
realize that. That's the
No, they
issue.
don't.
And it's so
That-
hard because you can look through your whole entire life and try and figure out what's a cult, man. That's like when you were mentioning the person that was able to like recover Scientology with press and kind of flip the stories and switch it around. Everyone's got a master manipulator. Charles Manson got somebody pregnant while he was in jail. Just one of those
oh,
conjugal
wow.
visits. So I'm like, that's a when he was like in his 70s. So like you're looking at that, like that's a master manipulator. There are people that, you can meet and you'll be talking to them and they'll be like, yeah. And then they'll like, they'll be chatting up with you. Like I have people like, for instance, when I'm working front desk at my register, I see the change total number comes up on the screen and I'll go to hand the money, but they'll keep talking to me to distract me and I'll get into a conversation. And then I go to hand the money. I'm like, oh, this is the money you just handed me to pay for the thing. I got distracted because
Mm.
it's like David Blaine, for instance. He's a
Mhm.
popular magic guy, but he even talks
Yes.
about it. He goes, it's just manipulation. Your eyes want to see and they're trying to find a road to go down, and you just
Mm.
move it to where it's a different thing and you weren't expecting it, so you don't see what happens and you miss that major flaw. People get stuck up in their own heads way too much.
Yep. That's how pickpockets get around it. They use one tactic to distract you while the other hand is going into the pocket, into the jacket, into the purse, wherever. But it's all misdirection. And religion is somewhat very, very similar to misdirection. Oh, look at all this old stuff over here, and if you don't follow what we say, you'll go to hell and you'll be sitting in purgatory for the remainder of your life and, or the remainder of all time. And then, but everything is now starting to shift, and people are now starting to see the evils of Christianity. They are starting to see the evils of religion. They're starting to see how divided we really are. But then in saying that, a lot of religions that were highly feared, even during 9/11, Islam. I have a lot of friends who are Muslim. I went to university with them, and there was this huge fear around, you say you're Islamic or you're a Muslim. But nowadays, everyone's a lot more relaxed towards it, and they don't push the religion on you. It's a personal choice. But now they're starting to open up their mosques. I mean, there was a couple in Melbourne that offered to open their mosques for mass vaccination centres, and they didn't take a cent from the government. They just said, no, we just want to open this up. We just want to help. Let's just get people in here. And it's just one of those religions where I would not be one of those people, but I believe that now I suppose that we're going from people being, down the line Christian and following absolutely everything that the Bible and Jesus says, and everyone is now starting to open their minds a little bit and go, oh, hang on, this Muslim Islamic thing over here, but it's actually not as bad as all the people over here in Christianity have been banging on about for years. And it's eventually, I mean, here in Australia, it's becoming apparent that Christian dominated religions are dying very, very quickly. I mean, I could go for a drive maybe 10, 20 kilometers out here, and I would easily see 7 to 6 churches that have been abandoned. They've been sitting there for years,
I
not
would have
doing
expected
anything.
more people in Australia to be atheist.
A lot it's hard to say. I don't think we're really atheists so much. We just more, no, we just want to live our lives and stuff like that. But to come across someone who is an active, blaring Christian with the crucifix in their hands and they've thrown the holy water and all that sort of stuff, it's really rare these days. And a lot of those people are shunned pretty much in society because, in all honesty, we're just sick of it. Especially after what happened with all the priests and the kids that they assaulted, it just turned everybody against the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, the fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints, the Jehovah's Witnesses, which there is actually a documentary on Jehovah's Witnesses at the moment. And I have a friend of mine who got out of that cult watching it, and I'm actually talking to her after this to make sure that she's okay, and so we can have a bit of a discussion about it. So, and people in Australia are just getting away from religions now and just trying to move towards just treat everybody with respect and kindness. That's really all it takes. Doesn't this Bible bashing thing? It's getting old, and we're all sick of it. That's just my opinion. Some of your listeners may not agree with that, but that's just, to me, that's the way our Australian society is going.
Yeah, because for Australia, like I had someone tell me, they go, "You really crap on Australians." I was like, I fucking love Australia. Just on a concept of like the way that like the people in Australia are just like how I am, like where it's like, I don't care what you fucking worship, just don't fucking try and shove it in my face. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I'm that type of person that's like, I'm gonna say, like, I like to curse, I like to say words, and if you find that, like, there's some people that be like, that hurts my ears. It's like, I know you curse on your own time. Why can't I? Like, I'm just expressing myself. You know what I mean? But I would picture more people in Australia be atheists, only on a concept of like, with all of that stuff that goes on. And I see, this is where I have to stand on the side with religion too, is because I know plenty of religious peoples. I have family members that are religious that just go like, I'm going to church. As long as you're not forcing somebody else to do that and you want to believe in something, I think it's all about kind of being around a community, which I think is like the main pull for it. But I think now, just with the kind of over exposure of media, has really kind of shown the dark realms of Christianity, shown of every religion, and even the government too. I think this is where a lot of distrust comes from and a lot of brainwashing comes from. Like that monk, like I was talking about in the beginning off of Rage Against the Machine. Now, in his head, he believed he was doing something that was going to be a sign for a lot of people. But the way you can also view it is that someone that was brainwashed into doing something like that. It's all about like, what is your reality? And I think when I bring this up a lot now, because I start to question, like, when the simulation thing, I don't think we're in a simulation. No, but I think our reality is the simulation. Our reality is everything that we agree to. Me and you agree that killing is bad. Certain drugs are probably bad, but that's our reality. But for someone else, their reality is different. Like maybe doing meth on the weekends isn't bad in their reality. You know what I mean? So it's very, very hard. And this brings back to the major point of like putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It's hard to do that because you can't get out of your own reality to do so. I can understand Scientology, but there's a lot of stuff in it that I don't agree with. And I think it's just about the way that I think we all kind of view Scientology, especially people that are against it, is an aspect of you're taking power over the weak, or people that are in a very critical state in their life, like their reality has now been shattered, and they have somebody taping up the pieces with a really shitty Scotch tape instead of a duct tape.
Absolutely. Actually, talking about really shitty things in Scientology, I was listening to Leo and Mike's podcast again, and they were talking about the financials. How does Scientology actually convince its members to get money and give it to them? And one of the most immoral things I've ever come across, and I've come across a lot of immoral things in my time, is if they want to get some money out of someone and they have an elderly Sea Org member, and remember the Sea Org are people who basically are servants of Scientology. They clean everything. They drive all the executives around. They do all the dirty menial tasks and get paid $25 a week to do it. And what they've been doing with the elderly Sea Org members, and these are people who are probably in their 70s plus, they probably feel like they really can't go anywhere. They don't have anything. They don't have a 401k or superannuation, as we call it here in Australia, or a house of their own or anything. But when they want to get money, what they've been doing is getting elderly Sea Org members to take their social security checks and then borrow that against a credit card. So leveraging it against a credit card, max it out completely and totally under their name. And then once that Sea Org member dies, basically there's no way to recover the money at all. So they're taking a loan against their own social security and then it might be for $10,000 credit card on American Express or something like, or Visa, whatever it is, and then giving that money to Scientology. It could be to another Scientologist. It could be to the Sea Org. It could be to some donation thing they want to do, whatever they've been convinced to do. But the really sad thing is that these elderly Sea Org members are being made to take out loans against their own social security. And then once they die, there's no way in hell that the credit card companies, financial institutions can actually recover that money. And believe it or not, it's legal.
Do they well, doesn't it just go to your credit card bill or whatever it does goes to the family member of the deceased one?
That's the thing. There's a possibility, very good possibility, that there might not be any family from here. According to what I've been told, is that once someone has died, and if they've got an outstanding debt with a financial institution, that financial institution is not able to go after the family to recover the money. The buck stops with that particular person. They're the ones that made the choice. And essentially, the banks completely miss out on that because they can't. What I've been told is that they can't legally recover the money from the estate. Now, remember, Sea Org members do not have an estate. They don't have anything. Scientology provides everything to them. So they don't have any assets. They don't have stocks, bonds, anything that they would leave behind, because all of that is banned in Scientology because they're a Sea Org member. And I just find it amazing in this day and age that kind of crap is still happening. And it's one of many tools that Scientology uses to get money. Not only doing things like that, but then they also get them to take second mortgages out, which I'm not too sure if that's still a thing, but I have heard of it happening. Getting people to up their credit card and using false information, and it all kind, whatever they can do to get cash.
It's motherfuckers like this that are the reason why I can't pull out more than $300 out of a fucking ATM.
Mm-hmm. Yep, dude. Here we've got limits on. I think it's a $500 limit here in an ATM, and then the system will go, well, hang on, you can't take any more out today. You're going to have to come back tomorrow, just in case you're a thief and we got you on camera and blah 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 and all that sort of stuff. So,
I'm happy
it's
systems
really criminal.
are in place, but I'm also like, if you were going to ask me, do I think Scientology probably has files or documents of stuff that they just scrubbed out of the government where you can't even look up and find? I would be 100% in belief of that. I think there's somehow people in our government system, because when I looked up, like, I'll read them off on my phone.
Yeah, sure.
Because I looked this up recently before we were going to do the podcast of 9/11. Oh, not 9/11. That was my last search result. But Scientology actors. And there's a shit ton of people I didn't realize were still in. I knew about John Travolta. Leah Remini was an X1. She's still marked on the list. Danny Masterson, Elizabeth Moss, David Miscavige, Juliette Lewis. Christy Alley is the one who supported Joe Rogan when he took that medicine to get over
I heard about that's crazy, man.
But she was the one that was on a show with Leah Remini, and now that I start to look back on it, that was back when Leah Remini was probably still involved with Scientology, back when she was on King and Queens, and I realized, it was like getting another. That's when I talked about before about like actors, for instance. Like, do you think that the only reason that they're successful is because Scientology got them a position to be an actor? I think Scientology's woven in, or they know one person and they fund that person with all the money that they have to be able to get the information that they need. To say that they don't have someone lodged in the Pentagon, to say that they don't have someone that's involved in there secretly. Freemasons have people littered all over the fucking place, and you don't even know how deep that stuff goes. We just look at it like, oh, it's just a lodge where people go and get beers. No, they have clubs where they're doing spells and shit like that too.
I've actually been done a wedding in a Freemason sort of lodge here, and there was 2 separate rooms, and I was never able to get into the second room to have a look there, but it's sold to us here that they do a lot of behind the scenes charity work. They're not really telling anybody, but look, they got secret handshakes. No one really knows the truth, and nobody ever will. Scientology is, if you want to understand everything that Scientology has, then they are notorious for keeping incredibly detailed records of everything. Absolutely everything. And that was a policy that was designed by L. Ron Hubbard to record absolutely everything. that happens in that place. So if the FBI, the IRS, the federal government wanted evidence, it is sitting in their lockers, their files, whatever they're doing. It's all there because
it's a government tactic. That's the thing. Is
yeah.
like people wonder why, like, oh my God, he was doing all these horrible things. I was like, you understand to get in a high position in the government, it's not about hard work. There's gonna catch you slipping up one thing, and they're always gonna have blackmail on you so they can always pass something. Like that's what like people complain about, like, why I can't believe all this stuff about like whoever politician that has like a dirty thing come out about them. And I'm like, no shit, because everyone has dirt on everybody. If you don't do something that they want, you wonder why they backtrack on a lot of things that they say. Is because they have dirt on them. And sadly, the one thing that makes people react in the worst possible way is something to do with kids. So whenever you want to get dirt on somebody, you end up getting them drunk or hied up or something, so where they end up going after someone that looks like they might be above age, but they're not. And that's the craziest thing, is like that's a manipulative tactic where I'm like, you look at the person. Everybody wants a face of someone that's causing the pain. Everyone looks at a certain person as just the person that needs to pay for the things. I'm like, do you understand this is littered throughout our history of just people that are involved in these institutions, where I'm like, you wonder why it keeps happening every couple of years? It's because you're not cutting off the head of the fucking dragon. You're cutting off his toenails or some shit.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of our politicians, there always seems to be something every week in Australia that our Prime Minister is getting busted on. I mean, even for him going home to Sydney for Father's Day, oh my God, that was massive. And it's only an hour's drive between the capital and where he actually lives. So, it's just insanity. But in our 24/7 news cycle, I feel there is a lot there to fill. So we've got a lot of journalists, a lot of people working in media, all of Rupert Murdoch's cronies and stuff like that. They need something to fill the space of that 24/7 news cycle. And look, scandal sells. And especially when it comes to politicians, when you have to look at your former president, Donald Trump, and just how much trouble he got himself into. So, and all of us are sitting over here just shaking our heads going, oh my God, I can't believe this.
I remember when he put up a tweet back when he was president about when he gave like $1,200 to everybody that wrote a check. He goes, if anybody hashtag not my president, I wouldn't want to offend you by sending you a check since I'm not your president. And they're like, no, you got to delete that, man. You got to delete that.
It really makes me wonder who his actual PR person was, or was he's fired them and he's just gone, I'll just do it myself.
Well, he was tweeting all of his own. That was all him tweeting.
That was all him. It wasn't a representative. It was actually him sitting in the Oval Office with a smartphone, just sending it out.
It was him actually on Twitter. That's why we're not seeing any tweets about it now. Well, that's what he openly said that he was doing, was because like even with Biden, for instance, you'll hear his speech, but then you'll see his tweets and you're like, this isn't this. He's got a guy doing all this shit. There's no fucking way. And that's like, everyone usually has somebody professional, but he wanted to control all of his own. Now he had someone running his Instagram and stuff like that, but with his own social media on Twitter, that was all him. That was his like fucking stomping. Because I'm not mad at someone that wants to, he's using the best of his abilities. And sadly, the best of his abilities is being a fucking heel. And that's letting everyone hate the shit out of him or being outrageous. And I think that's, at the time, that was what everyone wanted to see to get it into office or see whatever happens. And I think, I wouldn't be above people probably voting somebody like that in again. Not saying Trump, but just somebody with that explosive personality. Because if you notice through our whole entire presidential thing, it's always one end and then it's the other end and then it's the other end and then it's the other end. And it's always back and forth because people are like, I don't like this. Maybe we should just go the opposite way. I'm like, how about a fucking middleman? Can we get one person that's like has some good tweets, but at the same time is actually intelligent?
Yep, that's right. And it always feels like it's either the end of the extreme. We really don't actually have a middle. In Australia, we have two major political parties. We have Labor and Liberal. At the moment, our Prime Minister is a Liberal. He has an economics degree. He is all about the money and the elitist, and he's also a fundamentalist. Evangelical Christian as well. So, you've got videos of him in his church in Sydney, his hand up in the air praying to God or something. I don't know whether the hell they do. And it disturbs me that we have an evangelical Christian now, the Prime Minister of Australia. And I don't know, to be honest. It's probably one of the first time it's happened. We've had ones that are Catholics, they're Uniting Church, or they're Baptists or something like that. But I'm pretty sure this is the first time that we've ever had an evangelical Christian as the head of our country.
I think the reason why Christianity matters now when we choose our leaders only because it's seen as like good values just for the stigma of what Christianity was for so long, despite all the scandals. But most of the population that's voting is older generations that still are religious. All the younger kids coming up, I think in the next couple of elections or so, you're going to see a major shift change where we might have an atheist president. We might have someone that
Yeah.
believes in Scientology be our fucking president with how
Oh
woven
God.
into shit they are. I have no fucking clue, man. Nobody ever talks about it that's in Scientology. They say they're Scientologists, and you're like, why? And then they just skip over the question and they start going, well, don't worry about this. Worry about all my other stuff that I'm doing. I'm like,
That's
okay.
right. And remember, Scientologists are actually very good at filtering who you are or working out who you are very quickly, because they've indoctrinated to ignore someone who is a critic and just go, oh, they're just an apostate, or they're influenced by the internet. Denial. That's exactly right. And you try to give them hard evidence, or maybe just a meaningful, reasonable discussion, and maybe hope to have a light bulb moment and go, well, hang on, that isn't what I was bloody told. Okay, this is shit. I'm out. But yeah, the whole study of Scientology is designed to go so far down the rabbit hole and to take that pill. Now, of course, Matrix here, I can't remember if it's the blue pill or the red pill, which one goes down the rabbit hole. I think it's the red pill. But, you're encouraged to keep going down the rabbit hole, and the deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper you go, the deeper and deeper and deeper that you go into debt. And I mean, it costs on average over $300,000 for someone to even get to, say, I think it's OT5, which is operating thetan 5. Tom Cruise is an OT8, which is the highest that you can go. And apparently he can find perfect car parks, and he can communicate with everybody and levitate things, even though no one has ever seen him do this shit outside of Scientology.
Yeah, the ashtray thing. When you sent me that, or you tagged me in that, I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I get it, but like, I don't see that as like, oh, that's crazy shit. I just look at it like that sucks because that person's probably emotionally unwell and mentally just unwell. And but here's the thing is now a part of their reality, when someone's in that stage where their reality is shattered, you can morph it. And if I start thinking, hey, maybe I'm invincible, and let's say something hits me on my arm and then I don't get a scratch, maybe I might be invincible. And then it's like you start going down this fucking long rabbit hole of thinking you're invincible and testing it by trying to chop your hand off.
That's right. And it's just crazy. It really is. But yet again, it's a bona fide religion. It is getting tax exempt status, not only here in Australia, but also, of course, in the US and other countries as well. And it's all designed to be a money-making machine. Scientology will provide you with everything you ever need. You don't need anything else. You just need the tech that L. Ron Hubbard created, which was completely out of thin air, just came out of his ass. I mean, remember, this guy was a science fiction writer, so he knew how to write things to make them look so convincing.
It's kind of like it's so like if it goes back to like for instance, like bringing up Trump, I don't like the way like he shuts things down real quickly. It's like what I really hate is when you don't get to hear somebody out. So that's the one reason why I super don't like him, amongst other reasons as well too. I have to say that because everyone's like, you always shit on Biden. I'm like, yeah, because he's our fucking president. I don't see Trump doing anything anymore. So it's like hard. Okay. He did do something recently. He did a allegiance in front of the Moonies, which is like some moon cult. I don't know if you heard about this.
I have heard the Moonies. Yes.
So what is the Moonies? I know it's like I know their sons run it now or something. Two people.
Yeah. Well, if you go back to the Fair Game podcast, I think it's about halfway through, they actually talked to a professor, and his university name now escapes my mind, but he was actively in the Moonies cult when it first happened in the 70s. He got sucked in for about 5 years. And I haven't looked a lot into it, but I think a lot of it is the Moonies were actually based on Asian philosophy in some way. Though I think they were I think they were worshipping an actual person, but I'm so ingrained in this. There's just so many cults out there. It's really hard to remember every single. But Moonies, I have definitely heard of them. If you Google that, you will find a treasure trove of information. It's like when you Google Church of Latter-day, Fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints, or Jehovah's Witnesses, or Scientology, or one here in Australia that's called Little Pebble, which was the one that got me interested in cults when I was about 16 years old, because it was all based on Catholicism. And the guy actually took that, twisted it, got all these people involved. There was a lot of sexual assault of children. He did go to jail for it, but it was just crazy. And this cult was only happening about probably 300 kilometers in the same state as me. And when we say, 300 kilometers in Australia, it's like, yeah, that's a day trip.
So when he goes and does a whole entire speech, Trump does, to the Moonies, saying he appreciates their allegiance and all these types of things, it's like a giant. It's basically to piss people off. It's basically just trying to get attention and trying to get this whole like abrasive attitude that he has. But Elon Musk has the same thing, and it's why a lot of people hate Elon Musk. Elon Musk's name on Twitter now is just name, and it has a fucking check mark by it because he's like,
What?
why not? What's gonna be my name? Name. They said enter your name. Name. How about that? It's that thing that I fucking really enjoy, which is like you're doing it because you know you can and you got money for it. And I fucking he just put up a picture of his new puppy that he got, and he's like, "This is my new dog," and he says the name of it. And I'm like, everyone's commenting like, "You're destroying our atmosphere. You're doing all this," but it's just because he's not giving out his money. See, the weird part is with society is like if you're a billionaire and you're not doing something that's donating money, then you're a piece of shit. And I'm like, well,
Yes.
if you had $1 billion, you wouldn't care about anybody you don't know either. It's hard to give that money up once you have it.
Absolutely. And come to think of it, when you mentioned Elon Musk there, I mean, the South Australian government is actually indebted to Elon Musk because they had a massive energy problem for quite a while. And Elon and Tesla came in once he heard about the issues that they were having with a sustainable electrical grid. When it got really hot, South Australia is one of those places that gets really, really hot. The entire electrical grid would just go down. It was just crazy. So he actually practically in the outback somewhere, of South Australia, constructed this huge quarter-acre battery system. And it's designed to come on to power the entire state if the whole thing goes down in the heat of an Australian summer. So, everyone in South Australia is actually thinks he's some kind of god in a way, because he came in and he's able to create this lithium-ion battery system that comes on when the electricity goes off, and it can power the state for about 12 hours whilst they try to get everything back online, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but he's not the type that would let that turn. Like, if you were going to say he's a god and we're going to start a cult under Elon Musk, I don't think Elon Musk would be like, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do. He wouldn't want that though, because like that, he's not that type of guy. He doesn't have those characteristic traits. The weird people that want power are people that are like Elon Musk has fame. If he wanted to start a cult, he could start a cult. The people that start cults don't have power and they work their fucking way up. The weird part is like with like the cult Sea-Doo, which his name's Adam Egget. He was on the Norm Macdonald show. He has an experience and he talks about it, about like being locked into this fucking room with like in a circle with a bunch of people. It's known as therapy time. And then these people would come in and lay towels in front of this girl. And this girl would just scream on top of her lungs for like a whole fucking hour, to where her blood vessels in her eyes were bursting and spit was flying and the towels on the ground were to catch the spit. And he goes, oh my God, this is going to be my life for the next 2 years, every single day. Or no, it's 3 times a day, every morning, that this is going to happen. And it happened for 2 years of his life. And it was a cult. Kids were falling off cliffs trying to escape the fucking thing because it was in Joshua Tree in the desert. And I'm like, the people that want power, like, this is where I have an issue with the Boy Scouts. You're manipulating people. And when I know people go, well, they shouldn't be that manipulated. It's like, well, you don't understand, especially when you're a child, you're very, very easily convinced of stuff. And if you're an adult that hasn't had any outside influences, you're kind of like a child if you've just been raised one certain way without meeting any, like, that's what's important about public schools, for instance. My cousin's a private school or a homeschooled kid. he never had the influences with culture and heritage and all these other things of different diversity of races and stuff in his home. So it was hard for him to kind of like go out and do more normal things. Like it took him forever to ride a roller coaster. It took him forever to use an elevator. He wasn't 14 until he rode an elevator because he was scared. And it's like, when it comes to like manipulational things, when you're manipulating like the Boy Scouts, for instance, having all those alleged or like those actual charges that happened with kids, they got off on an $800,000 fine because they said, and even the guy that was a lawyer that was trying to sue the Boy Scouts even talked about what every person that had all these charges and all these horrific experiences only gets $1,000 or like $600 split between out of 800,000 that they won. He goes, you consider that a win? That's a fucking loss. These are people that at the age of 12 had to sleep with a counselor, didn't know what special tickle time was or whatever the fuck it is. And then next thing you know, they're messed up for the rest of their fucking lives.
Absolutely. And I went to a Catholic school, and I don't really wasn't really actively interacting with anyone who was a victim of all that. But I do know of one girl where she was, it was pretty well known that she had been sexually abused, and you could actually see the lashing out, the psychological damage, what it was actually doing to her internally. And she was also part of a religious sect here in Australia called the Salvation Army. Very small. They tout, trying to help mankind and do this, and they wear uniforms, very, very similar to the Sea Org in a way. And she was actually involved in all this, but they were not helping her in any shape, form, or capacity to help her to deal with the childhood abuse that occurred to her in a small country town.
There's a difference between, like, for the Freemasons, for instance, someone that's wearing a fez on their head and has a fucking eye on the top of it, and you're like, this person just looks ridiculous. Like, you don't take them seriously. But then when you see a person come in with a suit and they don't look like a lodge member, and they give money to someone at the door, and then they go into a back room, now that's real scary power. That's something where someone's finding a way to hack the system to make their life easier. And I wonder throughout my life, like, how many people are able to just hack the system to be able to make their life easier at the account that they don't really give a shit about what happens to the other people out there. And that's a hard thing, because without branching out of your social groups, without branching out of the friends that you have, like, for instance, if you would have never taken the podcast invitation, then there wouldn't have been this expansive conversation. There wouldn't have been these episodes, and there wouldn't have been whatever friendship this is, afterwards. And that's the thing, is like, when you don't know anybody, it's so much easier to fuck somebody over.
Absolutely. And I suppose in this day and age, now that we are so connected, we have the internet, we have the ability to talk to anyone practically on the globe with a smartphone or a phone, a computer, whatever. That idea is actually getting, just to me, just getting smaller and smaller. So it is people who have led sheltered lives, who have been told to, their family unit is all that they know, and then they're afraid of the outside world. That sort of thing is very slowly starting to disappear because of ready access to information at the click of a button.
So I had to fact check this, because I'm going to read off some of these facts on the Scientology website that I was looking at, and I want to see if you know some of these, or maybe you can expand upon these a little bit.
Of course.
So the thing I was mentioning earlier about the members. So while the Church of Scientology claims it has over 10 million members, its critics argue that it's about 500,000 members, mostly in the U.S., South Africa, and Australia.
Yes.
Scientology is successor of founder Hubbard's earlier self-help system called Dianetics, which was first published in 1950. Its publication is considered by Scientologists to be the seminal moment of the 20th century. So Dianetics, it's initially designed as a new psychotherapy. It was not expected to lead to a new religion. So is Dianetics like, it's not like eugenics, is it? Or is it trying to make the perfect person by doing like psychological experiments?
So the idea of Dianetics, and of course it's a pretty darn thick book, so I haven't been able to obviously go into depth with it, but
most religious texts are pretty big.
It touts itself as the new science of mental health, which I think was probably the slogan at the bottom of a lot of the books. And he wrote this just after he was dishonorably discharged from the Navy, and he saw it as a way to make some money. And he wrote the book. He then sent it to the American Psychological Association and started touting it and trying to get them to accept it as a new way of medical science. So he sent it to the American Psychological Association, say, hey, I've written this book, I've got some really great ideas, I want you to endorse them. And of course they came back and said, you're fucking crazy, get away from us. And he was pissed off. So from there, he had a lifelong vendetta against psychiatrists in particular. So if you go back through and look at videos of people like Tom Cruise or Kirstie Alley or those sort of guys, and if they touch on the subject of mental health and psychology, they'll just go, ooh, yeah, that's a really bad thing. Psychologists are bad people, you know. And L. Ron wrote that into his policies, that psychologists were bad people, because they said no to his book. And then, of course, he's now left with this bloody book that, you know, is not exactly, you know, great reading, but he then came up with the idea that, well, you know, I can start a religion based on all this, get protected by the Second Amendment, and then use that as the basis to, you know, to start expanding on these crazy ideas that I'm just blotting out of his mind. So it was it was basically just a text to start, you know, coming up with his warped sense of what mental health actually should be, but yeah, it really, really isn't.
It sounds like a kid stomping his feet because he wasn't allowed in the group. So he's like, I'm going to go start my own. And he's going to
Pretty
kick
much.
off. Okay.
Pretty much. Yep. He didn't get his way with the APA. And when he got when he got rejected, he then blamed them for everything, that they were the problem in society. They're the reason why people are getting sick. They're the reason why people are getting cancer, why wars are happening. He started blaming them for a lot of things, and it was all because they said, I'm sorry, but your Dianetics thing here doesn't make an ounce of sense. So we're going to say no. Thanks.
I think that's somebody who thought they had a revolutionary idea. And I mean, how many people, I think throughout history, you can always, like Leonardo da Vinci, for instance, someone that has those many thoughts or has those many inventions has a person that he could bounce those ideas off of, much like any great person who creates something has someone that goes, hey, let's not look at that one. That's not, but maybe we can add to it and do this and change it up. And the next thing you know, they create this amazing thing that we end up using today.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if you look through his past and you start to look through and see if he had some type of like old school, like middle age history books, or some type of fascination with kings and some type of old knights, whatever it is, because the sense all these people that start like cults or something like that, there has to be a psychology where they start hearing it. Either comes from people that never gave them an ounce of time, treated them like dog shit, or it came from a point where someone saw all this admiration and love and gold being tossed at their footstep, and then wanting that in return, so they create something where they can really capture that power.
Mm-hmm. You only have to really look at Jim Jones, who was now I can't remember the name of his cult, but Jonestown. Bingo, thank you. So I couldn't remember that.
Is it the People's Temple or Heaven's Gate?
No, that was the People's Temple. Heaven's Gate was the guy with the really crazy eyes, and they found 30 bodies. Right? Yeah, I think that was his name. And they found 30 bodies in, they'd all taken like the Kool-Aid or something, and they all had
fresh ass Nikes on their feet.
Yes, Nikes on. And I was actually in San Diego when that happened, and I could see his face all over Time magazine. It was creepy for a 15-year-old to see that.
He was on the TV saying that he was like a son of God or something. That is like
pretty much. But he had actually been at that cult for about 20 years before those events, and over the 20 years, him and his wife had just gone completely off course from their original idea, which was based on I think it was Buddhism, Hinduism in a way, and then it sort of just started getting warped from there, and we're talking about aliens come and get them because they've left their bodies, and you know, thinking they could take their nice clean Nikes with them and go up there. I don't know. But I was there when and you know, I just remember the front page of Time magazine in USA Today, walking down in San Diego and just going, wow, that guy has the creepiest eyes, and he never blinks in any of his videos. You play that back, He will not blink, not once. And it's just insane.
He's on meth.
But who knows? So it is known that a lot of cult leaders are on a various cocktail of drugs. Elron was definitely on a very, very, very hefty dose of
Hitler was on
all kinds of different all kinds of different stuff.
Hitler was on amphetamines.
He was, and he was going crazy.
Yeah,
absolutely. He was, and towards the end of the war, he was a walking mess. He could not function without opioids. So, you know, but by the end of the war, I mean, he killed. Well, everyone thinks he killed himself. I don't know if he did. We'll never know that. But
you think he didn't kill himself?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, look, we're going back to the 40s here, and there's really no evidence. The best part
about conversation is that, like, it's not fact. It's more like, what do you think? You know what I mean?
It is plausible. It is plausible that he staged his own death in order to get away. A lot of Nazis ended up seeking refuge in South Africa and South America after World War II because there was no extradition treaties. They didn't think anybody could find them. I mean, there's the possibility that he could have staged his own death. I mean, when they got down there, I mean, the bodies were not exactly in great condition. So, and back then, you know, we didn't have phones, we didn't have tablets, we didn't have computers. All we had was just eyewitness accounts, and a lot of the time they were probably exaggerated to a degree, depending on who they were talking to. But I think it could be a 50-50. He could have actually escaped and faked his death.
It's hard because it's very hard to kill yourself. Especially, it takes a lot of depression, but to kill yourself all because you're afraid of getting captured and what's going to happen to you, that seems like there might be a sliver of hope you can escape and then still keep doing what you want to be doing. And I think that's like why there's like rumors about Tupac still being alive and the whole Biggie thing that I don't know about. But I look at those, like, it's definitely interesting to look at, because for how many people were seeing videos of Adolf Hitler screaming and preaching or doing whatever he's doing, saluting to all of his people, and just this abrasive, like, person. And then next thing you know, you start hearing that he might have been on amphetamines. You're like, oh my God, this wasn't a person mad with power. This was a person on a hefty amount of fucking drugs.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, back then they really just didn't really know much about what these drugs they can do. And, you know, he had an entire section in the Nazi party that was just dedicated to medical research. So that's why some of those poor buggers, you know, from Auschwitz ended up going to, you know, to be experimented on to try and, you know, create all these drugs to try and create super soldiers in a way. It kind of sounds a bit like Captain America. But, you know, back then, you just had all these scrupulous doctors that were recruited by Hitler, and they either believed in his ideology or they were just doing it out of pure fear. And most of them ended up being taken by other countries for their knowledge. I mean, how many Nazi scientists were taken by various countries? I mean,
welcome to our whole space program in the United States is made by Warner von Braun.
Pretty much. I mean, and how many, like, scientists or Nazi scientists actually had a hand in the Manhattan Project? How many? We'll never know. I don't think we'll ever know.
Well, the Nuremberg trials forgave a lot of those Nazi scientists because they already did the act. There's no redoing or reversing the act. So we just thought we'd forgive them so we can get their research from it, because they were going to destroy it if we didn't forgive them for it. But like Wernher von Braun hung the 5 slowest Jews out in front of his rocket facility every week, you know, if you were to ramp up production styles. And I think the Nazis everyone looks at them as the worst group ever. And I'm like, if you really dive into history, there's a secret group called Unit 731 that was in Japan, where they would vivisection people, which is cutting you from the waist up. So they would just grab a stopwatch and then time it and see how long it took for you to die. And
wow, like, fuck okay. That.
Yeah. So they actually, if you ever seen the movie Snowpiercer with
no, never.
So like it's about this train, and it's like it's going around the world, and the whole world has gone like into ice age, and you can't survive long without freezing to death outside of the train. It only takes a couple of minutes. And as they would punish somebody, they would open up a train window and they would stick whatever body part they were going to punish you with, and they were going to stick it outside the window. So they stuck a dude's arm outside the window for, I think, a minute and a half. He brings his arm back in, and it's all frostbite, like majored, where they have to cut it off, and they just take a hammer and shatter his whole arm off. And now
Jesus,
the Unit 731 practice this. What they would do is they would go into the mountains where it's like below freezing, and they would take different temperatures of water, and they would have you stick your arms in whatever body parts they wanted to test to see how long frostbite would occur. And then they would
Hmm.
pull it out, and then they would chop it off. And they used to do crazy shit. They used to like take off somebody's arm and then attach it to another person's body. So he had three arms, and they would try and get the nerves to
Hmm.
work. Like the Nazis, like the interesting thing about that, which I kind of get obsessed with, is their science protocols. Like there's a lot of shit that we don't understand that involves with necromancy, which is horrible acts, but it's just fucking like we all enjoy Frankenstein, right? We all like
Hmm.
that story of somebody coming back to, well, that's the same shit, being able to use some type of electricity to move neurons. And everyone, I think, doesn't want to die, but we all
Mm.
want to sleep. But I don't want to live forever because I don't know what our idea of forever is. I think eventually, like back in the day, people were dying at the age of 30, and we go, those poor fuckers. Now we
Mm.
live to be like in our 90s. Who's to say 5 generations from now we don't get to live to be like 800 when we figure out another capacity of how long our bodies get to go? We just know what we know right now. And I think like with the Nazis and all that type of stuff. That it's always such a heated topic. It's like saying the word moist. There's just a bunch of people that just go, "Oh God, he said the word." It's like, yeah, but the fucking technology behind that. They had a weapon for bubonic plague, which is kind of the theory of why we invaded them into the first place. Not only about how they were capturing so many countries and literally covering such a vast amount of space. Who's to say that if there wasn't a body of water that was dividing us, that they wouldn't have taken over here? I mean, they were capturing a lot where every country had to kind of be like, all right, hey, we got to fucking go after these guys. There was a they talked about our weapons, for instance, when we were going against the Nazis, which was they might have had like, so one Nazi tank was worth four American tanks, but we
Hmm.
always
Yes.
had five because we would
Mm.
always pump them out like McDonald's. We were pumping out tanks like crazy. So actually, when people would kill a Nazi soldier, they would pick up their weapon. Now, I've studied deeply into the Holocaust only because I did a bunch of papers. It was either that or you had to fucking research something else. And I was like, I'd rather just do that because that's more like close to now. But when I read the
Mm.
accounts and journals of Nazi soldiers that talk about being afraid to leave the Nazis or run away because they know where their family is, this is what
Mhm.
Scientology is. They know where you fucking go to bed at night. They know who your
Mhm.
family members are. So it's not if you start having doubt, you can't show that doubt because now they're going to find your fucking family. It's not about making you suffer anymore. The worst thing you can do to me, Sean, is that not to hurt me, but hurt the people around me. That really
Mhm.
fucking stings, man. And that's what I think that's what their whole point is like, okay, we're not going to torture you. Actually, ripping off my fingernails would fucking hurt. But hurting
Absolutely
the
would.
yeah, hurting the people that you care about, if someone hurt someone in your family all because of something you did, you would feel like shit and you'd have to live with that for the rest of your life. And that's what they prey on. And that's what I don't fucking like about it.
Absolutely. I mean, let's take Mike Rinder for example. Mike used to be he was married in the church. His ex-wife was also a Scientology member. He's got three daughters as well. Now he's really started to what he puts fuck up towards the end of his Scientology career, if you call it that. And he was put in a hole. He was separated from his family. He was sent to London to, do whatever Ron Miscavige, not Ron, sorry, David Miscavige wanted. And when he left the church, they all his family, all his wife and his three kids, and any other family members and friends that he got involved in the Church of Scientology were all saying to him, right, he's left. He's now an enemy. You don't talk to him, or if you do talk to him, you only talk to him whilst we're there with you, so we can tell you what to say to him, or we can monitor the conversation. Blah blah blah. So, and then Mike had to make a decision. It was either his sanity or his family. And I'm quite glad, I'm happy to say, and this probably comes off a bit douchey in a way, but he has remarried. He does have two beautiful boys, and he's a very happy man now. Lives in Clearwater, and he still goes around and tells everyone, what he knows, and tries to spread awareness and all that sort of stuff. But he lost his first wife and his three daughters to Scientology, and when he left, they took them aside and said, "You have to disconnect," which is the word they use, disconnect from your father. He's evil. He's an apostate. You can't have anything. You can't have anything to do with him. And it's the same thing that happens over and over and over and over. If you leave Scientology, be bloody ready to be very lonely, for quite a while, because you will lose family, you will lose friends. They're gonna make your life difficult, very, very difficult indeed.
Well, I'm gonna have some good dreams when I go off to sleep.
Sorry, dude.
Man, it's nuts. I know. And that was Mike, right? That was Mike.
That was Mike. Yes, yes. So, and then, I think, and then the recording you were talking about earlier, which was the confrontation, the confrontation in the car park. That was his ex-wife and his three daughters. Actually, I think it was possibly two daughters. I think maybe one was starting to. I think I might get out of this, but he recorded the whole thing, and they were just screaming at him, telling him to shut his mouth. You don't know what you're talking about. You're an SP, and an SP is a suppressive person. So when someone leaves Scientology, they will be declared an SP, a suppressive person, and then their friends and family around them will be told to disconnect from them. So you have to disconnect. You cannot talk to that SP, and that's just the way it goes in
It's like
there.
we're in the fucking Matrix. Just disconnect.
So I can't wait for the fourth Matrix to come out too, by the way. That was awesome.
I haven't even seen one, so I don't know.
Whoa, dude.
I fell asleep when I was a kid when it first came out. I think I was like 12 or 11 when the first one came out. I fell asleep and I kept waking up every 10 minutes in the movie. So I was like, this movie's like 9 hours fucking long. And so now I can't watch it without getting like anxiety and shit. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm just not going to worry. I'm not a big Keanu fan. I know everyone loves fucking Keanu. I'm sure he's a great guy. I like him in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but
So
I don't get the whole like, oh, John Wick. I'm like, never seen it, and I don't really care to be honest with you.
I haven't seen it either. Being a wedding DJ and an event manager and uni student, all that is very rare for me to be able to sit down and go, well, I'm going to sit here and watch 3 John Wick movies in a row. No, I got shit to do. So no, off I go.
I got a life to live afterwards.
Pretty much. So yeah, but yeah, just I mean, I always come back to Mike when talking about disconnection experiences for Scientology, because he's an Australian.
I'm hoping to get him on the show.
Well, look, just keep trying. Just keep trying.
I mean, the man, people like you and Stephanie to like tweet at him, say go on, because I think I know he checked out the Stephanie episode, but I think also I talked to a vast array of people, and some of them might not be about this certain subject or something like that. Some might just be joking around or having fun with my friends. I have serious ones too, but it's hard if you only look at one and then you try to get another one and it doesn't go well.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, he is a very busy guy. There are a lot of people that are coming forward and, wanting to interview him for this and for that. And he's also got to lead his own life well. But the only thing you can really do is, and I'd love to meet Stephanie at some point if it was ever a possibility, is just to simply keep putting the tweets in, putting his name in there, Leah Remini. A lot of the Tony Ortega is a really good one to listen to as well, because he has done probably more than 20 years of Scientology's bullshit when he decided to start exposing them. And they have taken him to court multiple times and failed. They have tried everything to stop him, and he just keeps coming out with more and more and more stuff. And all that stuff that I tagged you in, the Tom Cruise stuff, that all came from Tony Ortega.
I'll have to check him out too.
So the Underground Bunker. Bunker, it's pretty awesome.
We'll talk a little bit off air about this too. But Sean, I appreciate you for giving me your time and everything for the podcast. Is there a place where people can find any of your links besides your Twitter?
Well, look, I keep all my Scientology stuff. I do actually keep that to Twitter. It just seems to be the platform that works. But look, if you are interested to know anything about wedding DJ kind of stuff and advice, you can find me on Instagram, Hayes DJ Entertainment, HAZE. You can also find me on Facebook as well under the same name, and of course on Instagram. I do have a TikTok where I do post some rather strange things, that stuff I've seen at weddings. Like wedding Karens. Sometimes I might put on a wig, and act like a wedding Karen or something. And, just stuff that I've come across in my 12-year career of doing the entertaining at weddings and what happens when people get really drunk and stupid. But I really do appreciate you having me on. And I hope I didn't waffle too much for your listeners.
There'll be another one coming up for sure. I can see it coming. I got to ask you about the wedding stuff. Good God, we never even talk about that. It all goes right to Scientology.
Oh, dude. I mean, that's a whole kettle of fish. I mean, next one we're gonna have a good discussion on that, and I can quite gladly say I have seen nearly every scenario from good to extremely bad. Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you for joining me on the podcast, and also thanks for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank.